And that concludes questions for oral answer. Would some honourable member care to move that the House take note of miscellaneous business?
Speaker.
The Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr. Speaker, I so move. Mr. Speaker, I'm tremendously proud to be part of a government that hasn't once in 8 years shied away from taking on the hard issues. And any government actually can set targets that they can achieve easily. And when you're faced with the difficulties of a 3-year term, which I've never been a fan on, the automatic response is to go for the quick win, quick turnaround, quick sugar fix response. Not this government. This government, from day one, has made it very clear that we won't shy away from the hard issues. And I'm not talking about launching a report or a study or an inquiry, actually getting in and doing something. Even if it's hard, even if it's not going to have it all fixed by the next election, we want to see the vulnerable New Zealanders assisted. And Mr. Speaker, yesterday I think there was no better example of that. When the Prime Minister gave, I think, one of the best speeches I've heard him give. I may be a little bit biased, I'll freely admit, but I think one of the most powerful speeches when he talked very clearly about how focused this government is on ensuring that we are there for the women and children and victims in this country who don't get to have that simple, most basic entitlement to a safe home environment. And that is something that happens, Mr. Speaker, in far too many New Zealand homes. That is something that has been far too easy for too many parts of New Zealand for a long time to turn away from, to think it's, oh, well, it's not something that happens in my family, it's not something that happens in my community. What are you ever going to do about it? That can't be the response. You have to, as a country, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, we have to, as a country, accept that the rate of family violence is a national embarrassment, it is horrendous, and it is at the heart of almost all of the social issues that I know we all worry about. Mr. Speaker, we have made it very clear, and the Prime Minister made it very clear yesterday, that where victims are not in a position to stand up for themselves, we will be there to support them to the very best of our ability. And as he said, just as the impacts of family violence are widely felt, the responsibility for dealing with it is widely shared. The government has a considerable role to play, and we acknowledge that, and we are stepping up to be the difference in that space. But actually it's not just about government. The responsibility for addressing family violence sits across government and core government agencies, it sits across Crown entities, non-government agencies, social support providers, charities, families themselves, communities, and most importantly, the responsibility sits with the people who are inflicting family violence. Mr. Speaker, the statistics are sobering, they are almost daunting, and yet they cannot be, I think, repeated too often. We know that there's 110,000 notifications to police every year, and we also know that probably represents only about 20% of the family violence that occurs. So actually that tells us there's something in the order of 500,000 instances of family violence every year. And if you want to look at our crime rates, if you want to look at serious crime, half of the homicides in this country, half of all serious violent offences are related to family violence. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I find most devastating about the realities of this area is that in those estimated 500,000 instances of family violence, children are present in those homes 2/3 of the time. So whether or not the children are being hit, whether or not they're the primary victims, the children in those homes are absolutely victims of family violence. And all of the information tells us that their life courses are significantly affected. Children who grow up in homes where there's family violence are 3 times more likely to take their own lives than anyone else. So when we talk about youth suicide, and I know it's something that every man in this House cares about, if the thing that is one of the most significant drivers of that is family violence, that alone tells us that it's something we have to do better on. We know that for those children, 57% of them will leave school without any educational qualification whatsoever. And again, we all know that if our kids are leaving school without an education, their chances of having a worthwhile, productive future are very, very limited. We know that half of the boys in those homes will grow up to be family violence abusers themselves, and most of the children will have the risk of being either victims or perpetrators. We have to, as a country, do more. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker, that there is an easy answer, but this government has made a commitment to reframe the system, to build a better system, and I look forward to being a part of it.
The question is the motion be